Greetings, Adronis.
Greetings to you.
All right. Mikhail, would you like to better up?
Greetings, Adronis.
Greetings.
My questions are in some general categories.
Very well.
My first area of interest involves meditation.
Meditation?
Meditation.
Or limitation? Limitation.
Meditation, yeah.
Meditation, all right.
I've studied over many years the various esoteric ways and have watched and read many things about meditation, and one of the key directives or directions that are given involve stopping the mental chatter, calming the mind, and as a way to access a different level of energy. And I'm really struggling with how to calm the chatter, how to stop my mind from racing.
You, in that sense, have white noise relating to thoughts, yes?
I do.
All right. The whole idea really is simple. It's not the idea of feeling that you must forcibly cease the thoughts. The whole idea is simply be the observer to the thoughts without feeling that you must attach to them. There is really nothing wrong with having a bombardment of thoughts when you are first going into the meditative state. All you are really training yourself to do is not having an anchor in regards to any particular thought or thoughts that, in that sense, distract you from your attention in regards to stillness. So see the idea of the white noise relating to all of these thoughts as a river that is passing you by, that you are simply seated amongst the grass and you are simply observing this river. You are not connecting yourself to any proverbial drop of water per se, but you are simply observing the flow in that sense, as it is an aspect and extension of yourself. So the whole idea here is that meditation really is the idea to where you can become aware. It is the state of awareness that will then bring you into a point of stillness, because stillness itself is simply awareness without attachment. This is how, in that sense, you are able to achieve allness, by simply being aware, not in that sense bringing yourself into the attachment of any one thought that represents the idea of distraction.
Did I clarify?
That does help some. I'll have to try that.
All right. So all really, in that sense, entails is you just sitting down on the couch or a chair or laying down on a bed, whichever you prefer, and just allowing yourself to drift away. You may feel that you may get some visualization of thoughts, or you may feel some mental chatter may come in, but that is all right. Simply allow that form to take place as it needs to, because as you do not give one particular thought attention, you simply see it in observation, they are incapable of attaching to you. It is very, very similar to the idea of feeling that a magnet can attract water. It can't. And so the whole idea is make the thoughts like water so that they literally cannot be attracted in regards to the magnetism relating to that little metallic magnet itself.
So if there's no
magnetism,
no
that's the whole idea.
Required.
Yes. Effort itself requires a magnetism of thought. And so the whole idea is to demagnetize yourself so that you are not magnetizing thought, you are simply observing it as water, shall we say, for example.
Okay, so I mean, the stream is definitely flowing.
Yes.
It's more like a flood, though.
Yes. Well, the understanding is that even this conduit himself, at times, when going into meditative states, have a bombardment of thoughts. But the whole idea is that you can also see it in regards to many different analogies, examples in that sense. Keeping yourself, for example, in a sphere to where outside of the sphere you simply see the liquid that represents the thoughts, but as you are contained in the sphere, none of those thoughts can breach the sphere itself. You are contained within your own space, therefore you are not appropriating any thought that represents distraction altogether.
Okay. So is there some point at which, if I'm in this sphere and the thoughts are going, is there some point at which there's some transformation or transition to a different sort of awareness, or is that something that
Well, that's what exactly happens in that sense. As you give no attention to thought, you are allowing yourself to surrender to the universe. And so the whole idea is that thought itself is based upon an aspect of ego. Any time that you are thinking, it simply is the correspondence to the ego. Very similar to how this conduit is communicating with us, it's not even really a thought process. It is more so to the idea to where it is, shall we say, an instantaneous simultaneity relating to process of knowledge that's happening in synchronicity. So we are not literally sending him thoughts per se, we are somewhat in that sense sending him a subconscious relay. Now, Brad has interpreted this in that sense as subconscious thought patterns, which in that sense can be understandable, but it's much more to the idea to where, in that sense, you have an inspiration to write. When you have an inspiration to write, you are literally allowing your hand to do all the work without thinking about the words. Right now, Brad is not even thinking in regards to the words that are being brought out. They are simply happening. And so it is what you would consider to be a happenstance. So the whole idea here is to allow happenstance in regards to the now stream to take effect. Therefore, you are not, shall we say, under the servitude to the idea of thoughts that are in that sense attempting to be delivered to you and seep through by the ego. So it would be much more in the idea of us, shall we say, sending through a subconscious relay process to where this is exchanged simultaneously through this conduit.
Makes sense.
Cool.
I guess I'll take off and ask a question.
Actually, I want to tie this, what I thought was a physical body question, to this answer, because the other thing that's happening when I'm trying to meditate is my ears ring a lot.
Yes.
Recently, more so recently than ever.
Yes.
And so I'm trying to determine if I should be listening to that ringing or ignoring the ringing.
Well, understand that nothing really needs to be ignored. You are, in that sense, acknowledging that the ringing exists. And basically what is happening is that your body is going through shifting polarities relating to the idea of your own energetic field. Your energetic field, in that sense, is spinning in different polarized directions to realign, shall we say, the proverbial antenna to allow a signal to become more pure in regards to a happenstance that is coming through. So the whole idea here in the ringing of the ears, the right ear, the left ear in that sense, you could refer to the right ear as the positive polarity. You could refer to the left ear as the negative polarity. That's not in that sense referring to the idea of unification or segregation, but it's coming more into the idea of what is polarized based upon the poles of your own body. Your body is designed just like the Earth, and just like the Earth, there is a north and south pole. And in time to time, shall we say, through the process of a great deal of, shall we say, expansion and progression of time, those poles at some point shift in regards to particular alignments. So this is basically what's happening with your body, is that octaves relating to your own auric field are literally shifting in unison to allow yourself to receive a broadcast transmission. Now, human beings themselves are walking broadcasting towers. As they are walking broadcasting towers, your own energy shifts in regards to the calibration of the vibration that you are looking to intake through yourself. And so this is the particular understanding relating to the shift of vibration. Now, there are those in that sense who do have, shall we say, telepathic transmissions that do come through the idea of the ringing of the ears, that shortly after the ringing of the ears, they may literally receive the transmission. But it simply is the idea of the result in regards to your own, shall we say, magnetic auric field that is shifting in continuity to receive the transmission in question, to allow the vibration to become, shall we say, propagated within your reality.
Wow. I must be getting a lot of transmissions.
Good thing.
Absolutely. Each and every single one of you are. So in that sense, all you're really doing is you're shifting from reality to reality to reality, frame by frame by frame by frame. But when you are picking up a higher octave in regards to yourself that leads to a point of expansion, you may literally have that one thought inside your head that goes off like an igniting flame and saying, oh my goodness, I never saw it that way before. And this is very well how you can experience a, shall we say, triggering of ringing inside the ears. That it's simply shifting your polarity based upon the state of being that you are aligning to right now to deliver this course of wisdom relating to this download state that then results in the shifting of polarization between your auric fields, magnetic fields together to become aligned.
Thank you.
All right, Adronis. Do emotions come from your thoughts about things?
The idea is that emotions represent a perception device. The whole idea is that when you are looking at emotions, you are perceiving the idea of meaning from thought. Now, thoughts themselves simply are neutral. They have no assigned meaning to them. They are very much similar to what you would know as situations upon your planet. The whole idea is that when you look at a situation and it literally triggers something in regards to its meaning, that is the perception of emotion assigning a meaning in regards to that particular thought or scenario together. It is what you would consider to be the triad relating to the three levels of consciousness: superconsciousness, subconsciousness, and, shall we say, conscious self. The whole idea is that superconscious, in that sense, is representing the matrix, the grid itself, everything that you experience through your five senses, or rather 6, 7, 8, etc. But everything that you understand, experience in this reality, that grid represents superconsciousness. The idea in regards to how it is being received to you represents the idea of subconscious understanding, shall we say, the role of the higher self in that particular understanding. As that reception is then carried through the superconsciousness, through the subconscious, it is then relayed into your perception. The perception assigns emotion to it to define its meaning, to help understand an integral part of what you are experiencing altogether, based upon the determination of your state of being in the mentality of what particular vibration of emotion you wish to assign a particular calibration of this nature. So emotion itself simply represents that of a perception device, in the form that it may be adding a little bit more depth in regards to the situation, because there are many beings beyond your planet that lack emotion. They simply look at everything in regards to a form of neutral logic, or shall we say, a higher logical perspective. So the benefit of you humans is that you have a wide range of spectrum of emotion, and this emotion simply enhances the idea of an in-depth understanding based upon perception ideas that come into your reality.
Makes sense. All right, so then what is the difference between emotions and feelings?
The feelings in that sense, shall we say, would represent the idea, if we could put it in that way, more so the idea of the vibration itself. Now, the whole idea is that the vibration itself could be represented to the idea of sensation. That the emotion itself is, shall we say, the inner core representing to that of the feeling. So in that sense, when you say, I have a feeling of something, it's not necessarily that you are experiencing an emotion. You are more so experiencing the tremor relating to that situation that then, in that sense, culminates together into the inner core representing emotion. So it is the precursor in regards to assigned perception. It is, in that sense, the instantaneity of receiving the subconscious understanding of what you're going through that determines the feeling that is then brought into perception that then warrants the emotion, therefore giving it its meaning based upon the assigned emotion in question.
This is amazingly similar to high-level program languages.
Correct.
Huh.
So feeling in that sense really doesn't inherit emotion. It is just the, shall we say, tremor before the reaction. It is what you would consider to be an action-reaction complex. The action would represent the feeling. The reaction would represent the emotion.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yes, and of course I'll be going over it again just to make sure it does.
We thank you very much for the wonderful questions that you are providing, as this conduit himself is becoming very excited with the information.
You want me to go?
Oh, no, I can. Just whenever you're ready, and let me know. And
would you like us to play Jeopardy music while we're waiting?
All right.
Just joking with you.
This is one. Yeah, no, we took you very seriously. We're waiting for
all right. And again, that's where the form of misunderstandings can be brought forward. Oh my goodness, we're going to take Adronis so seriously. Well, here's a surprise. Joke ahoy.
We were both interested in the Galactic Federation of Light, and
yes.
And that I was recently contacted somewhat spontaneously by this gentleman on the internet who asked me if I'm aware I'm a starseed, and he went on to a lot of these details. He seemed to know quite a bit about my private life, but he also said a lot of really strange things that didn't seem to resonate with me.
All right. Could you be more specific in regards to these understandings?
Well, from my understanding, that I was not anywhere even close to this universe, or I was like at the far reaches. But he told me that they told me I was Arcturian.
All right. You are much more than that, but all right.
Okay, so in terms of like actually coming from what is that? We come from multiple planets?
Well, the understanding is that everything exists now, that there is no past and future. They represent side effects based upon the continuity of consciousness. The whole idea is that you will have a particular civilization or civilizations that you will vibrate to in resonance that are inherent in regards to experiences that you feel you are cohesively expressing, experiencing, relating to in regards to the energies of such beings. The Arcturians themselves represent the idea of what you would consider to be the most advanced and technological aspect of civilization that represents this particular galaxy that you would know as the Milky Way. So they, in that sense, represent an enhancement. That's not to say that you are not Arcturian, but it is also in that sense that they represent a trait of yourself. We're not dismissing the idea of saying that you are not Arcturian, because you certainly are. But the whole idea here is that you are looking in regards to the understanding of traits pertaining to civilizations, Pleiadians, Sirians, Arcturians, Andromedans, Lyrans, etc. And by the way, we sense much more in the idea of the Lyran energy. But the whole idea here is that the particular traits relating to these civilizations hold, shall we say, practicums in regards to the responses of situations. So you may understand that what you would consider to be your 12 signs of the zodiac, the idea of your astrology in that sense, are coherent with the themes that you are exploring within this life that can then reflect a relationship in regards to other particular civilizations that exist in other dimensions, other stars, other planets, etc. So it is not so much the idea of saying that you are only Arcturian, but in that sense you hold a high regards to energies that are coherent and related to the idea of these particular races, very similar to how you would understand your own themes of astrology in regards to personality complex.
So if I believe what others have told me in the past, then my spirit being has possibly been through all 12 of the houses. I've been from every.
Yes.
I've been all over the place.
Correct, because understand that all 12 simply represent the idea of themes that you have been experimenting of in regards to a happenstance situation, because happenstance in that sense represents the result of allness together in the now. And so therefore your soul, literally being an infinite continuum of expression, has in that sense never experienced a lack. It is in that sense has experienced allness in its own degree, and basically what you are doing is you are enacting that one particular fragment that represents the infinite of this crystallus form that has an infinite amount of rivets, fragments together. So you are in that sense experiencing one rivet, one fragment in regards to this infinite crystal that has an, shall we say, infinitesimal amount of, shall we say, rivets and fragments together.
Makes sense.
So theme itself simply represents the idea of an archetype in regards to an infinite amount of archetype that the soul has personally experienced in regards to its progression of understanding how it can be infinite.
Told me before that chakras actually don't exist, that it's all a concept that would be good for me to get out of my mind, that it was all just a large vortex of energy.
That's the basic idea. You must look in the idea, shall we say, relating to the overtones, as we have just started to talk about, relating to conscious, subconscious, and superconscious self. The whole idea is that these are overtones relating to the idea. Everything that represents your own body itself literally is just one giant vortex. However, if you're looking much more into the idea of separating the overtones in regards to the allness, this represents the, shall we say, propagation in regards to particular centers that make up the wholeness in regards to yourself. Truly, your own shape relating to your body itself would be much more to that of a torus. So therefore, the torus, in order for it to expand in the way it does, to send and receive in the way it does, represents certain octaves of particular mini-vortexes, shall we say, or vortex gateways contained within certain areas of the body that then creates the whole. Understand that when you put together a puzzle, you are in that sense putting together pieces that represent the whole. Make sense? So all you're doing here is understanding the parent thesis in regards to the subcategories of vortex energies that then make up the one wholeness together. What we often state to many is looking at your body together as wholeness and purifying it together in regards to wholeness, rather than just looking at, shall we say, the particular chakra centers. Now, chakra centers can relate to the idea of imbalances, yes, but without the idea of looking at your body in wholeness, you are only looking at areas that can be repaired, but it is most so to the idea of by looking at the form in the whole, you are not looking at areas that have been missed. So therefore, shall we say, for example, if you feel that your root chakra is out of balance and you go ahead and you work to repair it, have you considered looking at the other chakra centers? Have you considered looking at your meridians? Have you considered looking at the wholeness in regards to the torus shape of the energy field itself that represents discrepancies? So looking at it in regards to the wholeness helps you to gain understanding of how to be more preserved in regards to how far, how expansive, how, shall we say, healthy you are in regards to an energetic level that then corresponds to the physical.
So is this why the Sufi spinning dance is such a centering exercise?
Yes, because it in that sense works together the wholeness of the energy body.
I really like Sufi spinning. It's the first of the 5 rites.
I remember.
So I guess what I'm trying to ask is, can mountains be used as an enhancement to my antenna?
We would recommend it. Mountains themselves are natural pyramids upon your planet. So therefore, you may look into the idea of, shall we say, what has been inherited through many of your indigenous cultures as standing stones. That the standing stones themselves are natural resonators. That trees themselves are natural resonators. That mountains themselves would represent the apex of natural resonators. Again, constantly sending and receiving. And there are certain designated mountains that represent the idea of what is being entered and what is being exited based upon the preference of the energies using them. But the whole idea here is that if you decide to move up to the mountains in that sense, going right up to the mountains, allow yourself to move to the summit and allow yourself to get into a meditative state and allow yourself to feel the resonance and the containment relating to the mountain itself. As you do this, you will discover fundamentally that the energies themselves will become widely abundant. You will literally, shall we say, experience a supercharge relating to all of the energies that are sending and receiving in regards to these natural pyramids on your planet.
Nice.
Because the more that there is natural earth in regards to mounds, in regards to hills, and in regards to mountains, the more that that is energy. Matter itself simply is energy. And therefore it is attracting itself in regards to its funnel, particular type of process, the way it appears in that way, that will literally allow you to become energized. Just very similar if you were able to, shall we say, if possible, sitting at the top of the Grand Pyramid of Giza, the Great Pyramid of Giza, you would literally feel this helix-style spiral energy coming in through the apex of the pyramid and funneling itself out like a fountain. Very similar to your mountains in that sense. As you reach the summit, you start to feel the natural coding of these energies that can give you, in that sense, a very enlightening experience.
Cool.
This is why so many of your elders, indigenous cultures in that sense, often perform ceremony high within the mountains. Simply because that is where most of the energy is.
Okay. Cool. That works.
Let me see here. What was it? Okay. How is it that we can completely trust the answers we receive? And what I mean is that, people speak about, writing automatically, taking in information, answers that come to us. But in many times when I feel like I've gotten an answer that is, honest, it will lead me astray. It won't actually be a correct, spontaneous answer. It feels like there's just a lot of trust issues, not only myself, but it seems like most of us have with moving in tune with our source energy, with our...
Well, that's the whole idea, is that when you are literally moving into higher vibration, it cannot steer you incorrectly. It's more so to the idea of understanding, are you moving more into a higher frequency? And is the information that you are receiving truly coherent with what you feel your situation provides? Because many of you, in that sense, allow information to come through, but you become so overly polite in regards to the information, you really know that it's not going to be a potential benefit with you. And so in that sense, you enact in regards to that understanding based upon the credibility of the person. So the whole idea here is that even all the information that we are sharing with you today, we would suggest both of you in that sense to, shall we say, clarify this through yourself and understand that exactly everything that we're saying is simply one's particular perspective. In regards for you to understand your own truth, you must move more into the vibration where deception cannot lie. The ego, in that sense, at times will make it appear as if it is your intuition, simply because it relates to the idea of attempting to keeping you controlled within a state of limitation.
Yes, this is actually my biggest issue.
Yes.
Is differentiating between my essentially soul and ego.
Now, this is where many of you have the most difficulty, simply because you have no problem giving other people truthful advice because you are looking at them as an observer. But as you are looking in yourself in regards to certain answers that you seek, you are looking at yourself in involvement in the basis of receiving that information. So the whole idea here is if you feel that you are becoming too involved with a happenstance, then the whole idea is looking in regards to, shall we say, another observational perspective that can in that sense share a commonality with what you felt you have gotten. And again, this is where others can be of a great assistance. Talking to others in regards, well, this is what I feel, what's happening in my life right now. This is the energy I feel that's happening right now. What do you feel? And allowing consensus to come through in regards to what could be a confirmation or, in that sense, a misleading based upon ego principle, relating to the idea of, shall we say, disguised or veiled answers.
Okay, so to narrow it down, essentially, is identification with our thoughts what feeds this system of chaos/ego?
The idea of what truly feeds ego itself is the ability of the illusion of superiority, the illusion of separation. So when one feels that they are almighty or that they feel that they have all the answers, they simply see themselves as a greater form in regards to everybody else. It is a lack of equality that truly feeds the ego based upon the programming that many of you have experienced since childhood. Now understand that as a very young child, you pick up everything. A child themselves really is incapable of discernment. Discernment can only be attained in regards to wisdom. And through wisdom itself, this relates to the idea of many of the experiences you have come across to gain in learning based upon what you felt you could have done, or in that sense, what was now learned based upon what you previously experienced. So the whole idea here is that the children themselves really are incapable of discernment. So this is where the adults in that sense can come in handy, and that's why many of you in that sense may give advice to your children, and they're saying, all right, thanks, Dad, but I know what I'm doing. I'm going to do this differently than you, and in that sense they may literally inherit the same form of outcome that you may have experienced, shall we say, as an example, as a teenager. They literally have to go back through that in order for them to understand discernment. And so the whole idea here is that discernment is something that's achieved in adulthood, moving more into the idea of wisdom to help you discern in regards to strengthening the filter of what is more beneficial for you rather than what isn't.
Okay.
You've used the term consensus a couple of times now.
Yes.
Which I'm very intrigued by, because a lot of the social structure that I've been instrumental in creating during my lifetime, a big part of that structure around community or tribe, I could call it, involves consensus decision making.
Yes.
Obviously, the reference that you just made to it was consensus, like between the two of us, as we're like thinking about some idea or concept and trying to get to the truth of the matter, if you will.
Well, here's the idea. The idea of consensus itself is what you would consider to be the purification of paradox. Because the whole idea is that when we are saying consensus, we are literally talking about you yourself. But everything that you are experiencing in regards to themes upon this planet represent octaves, or shall we say subcategories, relating to the allness of what you are. So therefore, when you're experiencing consensus, you are literally allowing everything that represents every fabric, every facet of your being, that is then in agreement in regards to performing a decision within happenstance. So therefore, the whole idea is that the paradox, the infinity symbol in that sense, works together as it needs to. It is no, in that sense, distorted or broken apart to where infinity cannot flow. It is in that sense what you would consider to be a straight line that is slowly starting to curve, that is slowly starting to twist, and slowly starting to come together, that represents the infinity. This, in that sense, works together with the idea of paradox, that even though there is a finite form of symbol representing the infinite, it continues to flow infinitely. So the whole idea here is that the finite aspect of yourself, of what you believe yourself to be as an individual in this life, really is going through the consensus of all aspects of yourself to determine exactly the path that is coherent for yourself in the best way possible. This, in that sense, would represent the certainty of consensus that then allows the functioning and purification of paradox to flow. The universe itself is all based upon paradox. When you understand paradox, you understand the mechanics of the universe. This is why fractal patterns, in that sense, are so highly, in that sense, credited to your people, is the understanding of knowing the natural geometry of the universe represents the idea of fractal, paradoxical geometry.
When you're saying the universe, do you mean totality or just this universe?
We are referring to totality.
So you're saying that once you understand paradox, you're understanding totality?
The whole understanding is that the universe really is a fragment of many other universes combined. Understand that, say, for example, where you were able to go into another reality where, shall we say, the Germans themselves are the dominant form, in that sense, masters of the planet. You're literally moving into another particular universe that has been, shall we say, moved into a universal mitosis that has created that particular reality. You must see, in that sense, the idea of what you would consider to be the flower of life. That the flower of life simply represents these other octaves, these other particular forms of fragments themselves that move together infinitely, that when you scale, there are only the repeats of those patterns. This is the idea of the universes themselves, that they are infinitely scaling. So it would be much more to the idea of, shall we say, the verse. The verse itself could represent, shall we say, one theme of universe. So when we are saying universe, we are talking about unified verses. So therefore, the whole idea of the universe, unification of all versions, of all themes, of all expressions, of all experiments, together simultaneously as one. Now, in totality, there really is only one universe. But again, this is where you're looking into the overtones, based upon different themes that represent, shall we say, other verses that have a change of theme in regards to their propagation of experience that you are going through. So in that sense, an alternate reality to the outcome of World War II. An alternate reality to, in that sense, to where the Earth itself is much more feminine guided than masculine, for example. So again, these all relate to the idea of different themes of different verses, but looking into the accumulation of how all these themes are propagated are truly moved into the happenstance of the universe. Make sense?
In a way, just to clarify, you were saying that to understand paradox, essentially that oneness, that universe is based off of paradox. Everything, every
Correct.
reality?
Yes.
Okay, that's something that's very, very eye-opening.
Every reality in that sense that represents another verse must form together in paradox. Otherwise, it does not represent the systematic anti-systematic system that represents the universe. That's the whole idea of how the universe works. It is a system that is not a system. It is an anti-systematic system. So when you are not functioning in paradox, you are simply not functioning within a, shall we say, correspondent universe. You are functioning more into the idea of limitation based upon what's assigned within that verse, not the verse itself. So in that sense, the idea that your scientists feel that you are alone in the universe, that there is no life out there, represents the idea of a segregation. That segregation simply is a sub-theme contained in the allness relating to paradox where life does exist. So that's the whole idea. You are simply playing around with illusion in regards to the grand stage that represents the theme of that verse.
So how do we create the consensus we need to redirect the humans, to get the humans to a different understanding, to get it?
It's not really for you to do so. It is in that sense for each and every single person to realize what they are capable of in order for them to expand. Now, you're always going to be expanding. There is never an end to expansion. But what you are doing is, it is very similar to the analogy that we have referred to in regards to collective and individualistic progress relating to that of the tortoise and the hare. That the collective consciousness represents the idea of the tortoise. The tortoise will slowly begin to accumulate, shall we say, what is, shall we say, trending in regards to your collective consciousness. So the idea of the spirituality or awoken explosion upon your planet is something to where a milestone that the tortoise have met. Each and every single one of you on an individualistic level is much more of a hare, because you are moving much more into a prosperity relating to advancement that does not require the ability of a trending of others in order for you to gain permission of your expansion. So the whole idea here is that this represents the idea of a tortoise and a hare relationship, to where the tortoise at some point will meet certain forms of octaves that you have already surpassed, based upon the idea of what is acceptable through trends in regards to its collective consciousness. Whereas you are literally going on your individual basis, and really all you're looking for is for yourselves to expand in order for that to become the trend. Your expansion in all the ways that you can imagine it, when it becomes a commonality in regards to a trend, that is what is literally becoming consensus through the collective consciousness.
Adronis, you're fading out on this a lot. It's getting worse.
One moment. Are you able to hear us now?
Yes, much clearer. Thank you.
All right. Were you able to get all of that?
The very last sentence I was going to ask to repeat, because you
all right.
Consensus.
The whole idea is that once you move from an individual level in regards to your own acceleration, it is simply up to each and every single one of you on an individual level to reach your own, shall we say, apexes of expansion, to where it becomes a commonality that then represents the idea of the trend, to where the collective consciousness is expanding in regards to its analogy of being a tortoise. The tortoise in that sense is always moving, it's just moving very, very slowly, whereas you are always accelerating, and where there is a commonality of point to where there is equal acceleration, all of you combined together. This is what represents the idea of our particular interpretation of a trend that then follows suit in regards to collective consciousness expansion. So the trend that you're at right now represents the idea of mass awakening, realization that you are more than everything that represents the system. That's the trend that you're at. Your collective consciousness has not yet reached the state of maturity in order for you to initiate contact with other civilizations. That's what's coming up next. That's the next trend for you to understand. And within the years to come, that will be a trend that will be met in regards to collective consciousness consensus.
Is there a way that I can, as an individual universe, facilitate the expansion of the collective consciousness to that end?
No. Because understand that what you are dealing with is others who are universes upon themselves that are then deciding that arrangement, in that sense, needs to be brought forward in order for there to be consensus. It is very, very similar to the flower of life. That the flower of life represents geometry that is strategically positioned in the particular alignments necessary in order for it to become once. A fragment of it is not going to go up and smack another fragment and saying that you're in the wrong spot. It is much more in the idea of understanding that you're all coming together as a particle to literally form a wholeness of particle. That it literally are subparticles, or shall we say subatomic particles together to create that which represents the atomic. It's not that they're smacking each other. It's that they are allowing themselves in timing to, shall we say, be consistent, to allow themselves to work together in harmony in order for there to be consensus, therefore basing the idea of a completion. That's what's going on here. So the whole idea is that as, shall we say, alignments continue to work together in regards to their own understandings of perceptions, you will then move into other states of completion to where it is simply an infinite cycle. That there's a circle within a circle within a circle within a circle that is constantly being propagated to infinity, and it never ends.
So essentially, the more we simply focus on ourselves and our own expansion, consciously and otherwise, the quicker that helps raise the vibration for all other life around us.
That is correct.
Okay, sweet. Makes sense. Perfect.
So there's no way to... No.
You can always inspire and you can always share ideas, but it is not up to everybody else to take them. Let us say, for the example of, shall we say, a murderer who has murdered a large amount of people, and you cannot fathom how this person was able to brutally, in that sense, murder so many people. To him, this is something that's just natural. His own fear has solidified to the idea where this is natural in his life. But you cannot conceive of the idea, and you are attempting to force him to look at it another way when he simply does not have the clicking of realization to realize that what he has done is not the way in regards to love. That's something that he must acquire in regards to his own realization through the example that he sets to himself to give a reason for him to transform. This is why, in that sense, that your law enforcement is truly obsolete, because it serves real no purpose. It is, in that sense, a continual excuse allowing segregation, separation to come through based upon the idea of punishment to be the norm of, in that sense, functioning in obedience. But if that was the case, there would literally be nothing but obedience upon your planet. So you know for a fact that the idea of law enforcement and your justice, in that sense, is greatly irrelevant and obsolete based upon the idea of continual segregation that it represents. The only way one person can ever change is when they realize that they need to change.
Yes, makes sense. Is attachment natural or a side effect of the ego?
The attachment itself truly is an unnaturalness, because nothing in the universe attaches. The universe is not going to feel sorry for you in regards to you, in that sense, having a great deal of sadness, where the universe is literally going to manifest you a lollipop. That's not the whole idea. Is it represents the idea of what you would understand, that when you are showing a smile in the mirror will easily reflect that. It will not show a frown if you are showing a smile, and vice versa. So the whole idea here is that the universe takes you very literally. It is not in a joking mood. It really doesn't understand the form of, shall we say, in some ways, sarcasm, based upon the alignment in that sense. Oh, I'm the most worthy person on the planet. When you're truly speaking that in the form of unworthiness, the universe then sees that as an unworthiness. It does not understand the sarcasm of thinking that you're truly worthy when you already know yourself not to be. So in that sense, you could say into the mirror, oh boy, I'm really smiling right now, when you have a frown. Therefore, the universe can only represent the essence of the mentality of what you're portraying through your state of being, rather than the idea of, in that sense, taking you in a joke form to where it will do something completely opposite in regards to your state of being. It can't do that. All the universe represents is one giant hall of mirrors that represents yourself. You're standing in this universe looking at all of the way, all of the angles, all of the perspectives that you can address yourself in regards to the reflections you see in the mirror relating to the universe.
So is there any positive benefit to partnering?
Absolutely. Because understanding that to partner represents the idea of mixed polarity. Let us say, for example, that there are those in that sense, in another particular way, of a technology that can be very beneficial. The idea of a car. Now let's say that the idea of a car has now been perfected to the point where it is now electrical and no longer burning fossil fuels. Someone can still use that car to run over another person. But the other idea is that someone will simply use that car to go to point A to point B. So the whole idea here is that there are both positive and negative aspects in regards to everything. You cannot render obsolete a form of polarity relating to a prop. A prop will always have polarities assigned to it. So moving back to your relationship example, there is the idea that relationship itself is a prop. That if you can represent the idea of the benefit of relationship in regards to understanding that relationship itself simply is the feeling and result of you loving yourself through another, that can be the potential benefit. But getting into a relationship to where you are feeling that you are greatly attached to the person, or that you are relying so much on the person to look after you to where they are personally drained, creating inconsistency of the relationship, could in that sense fundamentally be a negative. So the whole idea is that everything in your reality is simply that of a prop. And this is where emotional perception comes in, because you want to assign polarities to it. We're not saying to annihilate emotion. We're simply looking at the idea of seeing how you can balance it, so that you can gain an understanding that the negative and the positive both exist together as a whole, and that as you look together as a whole, you are no longer segregated to the idea of belief that is representing you functioning from one polarity or another. You simply see it as is. This is why we literally call creation itself the isness, because the isness itself is neither positive or negative, and it is positive and negative combined. It is the nothing and the everything. It is the microcosmic and the macrocosmic. It is everything what is, because you are only experiencing what is in this very moment. Therefore, us terming it as the isness.
Nice. What lies at the core of procrastination?
Procrastination in the idea, the inability to accept the other, a lack of love. To procrastinate is more in the idea of, in that sense, not being able to accept another person's perspective. And so then this leads to the idea of, in that sense, hopelessness, or in that sense, ridicule or judgment based upon how one cannot perceive themselves in a similar situation. They then see themselves as separate.
So in terms of, like, let's say I feel like I should do something, or something just, it would be good to get done, like clean the kitchen so the food doesn't go.
So you're referring more to the idea of self-procrastination?
Yes. I would mean in terms of a relationship. That was a
all right.
question.
Well, the whole idea is that, yes, that can happen on both levels, through the self and through another.
Right.
The whole idea of self-procrastination is, again, just an element of the ego. There's nothing wrong in that sense of reminding yourself to do that, but the whole idea is that when you know the importance, you know yourself to do it. That's the whole idea. When you constantly procrastinate with yourself, you are simply bringing yourself into a state of no value, because you feel, oh my goodness, I'm such an idiot, why didn't I do the dishes tonight? When you look at yourself in a happenstance observational perspective, you're looking at yourself, well, I got home very, very late, I was very, very tired, and I decided to go to bed because I simply did not have the energy to do the dishes. So you're looking at yourself in an observational happenstance. Rather than the idea of procrastinating of why you didn't do it, you're moving more into the idea of what ifs rather than what is. So accept that at that previous night you decided not to do that because this is what has happened. So now, right now that it's within your awareness to do the dishes, you are now within the alignment to perform that, to do it yourself. There are no demands other than demands that you personally consider you must do in order for you to have an effect in your reality. So the whole idea is that your demands simply are based upon the self. They are never really based upon another. It is simply the excuse of what you have accepted as that procrastination from another that then represents the idea of the procrastination of the self.
Makes sense.
So this applies to delaying a decision. So, the way we're making our way through this plane, either nothing can happen or you can make decisions and cause things to happen in your life.
Right. But the whole idea is that nothing really is not happening. It's only the illusion of feeling that nothing is happening, when truly everything is happening. Yeah. So the whole idea of that when you say when you're doing nothing, well, did you literally experience non-existence? No. You were doing something that you only perceived to be nothing because it could in that sense represent the idea of a lack of physical activity. But in that sense, at that point, you were literally conceiving ideas within the mind, or you felt that you were, shall we say, contained within your own thoughts, in your own space upon that time. That's not to say that you weren't doing nothing. You were doing something, but in comparison to what others would consider to be something, you then define it as nothing.
I think some of my...
So you're never really, in that sense, doing nothing, if you were to refer to it as non-existence. Nothing simply represents the idea of something that may be inconsistent or really irrelevant. But in that sense, there is relevancy in everything.
So I'm I'm really running programs. I mean, I'm falling back to the question I was asking about how can I help others? And a lot of the decisions that I'm thinking about in this light are decisions about intentionally creating events or activities that would benefit others or lead to some generally positive outcome.
Well, here's the idea of what inspiration truly represents in regards to many of your people. Your people understand inspiration through the idea of example. When you are able to fulfill yourself into the point that you are following your inspiration to the letter, you are seeing this self-fulfillment that is so deeply within yourself that is enriching your being for others to literally allow themselves to notice this display of who you are. So therefore, the whole idea is that when you get everything of yours together in regards to trusting yourself, loving yourself, understanding that it is not experience that defines you, it is you who defines experience, and you really see your life transforming around, this is something in that sense that can be alluring to others. It's not to say that they'll 100% accept it, but it is something that is getting their attention. That's the whole idea of how you can really be the best beacon of help, of assistance to others, is that when you show yourself as an example of the fulfillment that you are conveying together. Now again, some people will see that as something as a great inspiration, and it can click inside their minds, and some may simply decide to ignore that based upon their own issues that they're personally dealing with. But the best form in regards to how one can be of assistance to the other is when they are becoming an example to the message of the assistance that they are willing to convey to that other. Make sense?
Yes.
All right.
But
So in that sense, the more that you can see yourself together with love, that there is never a reason not to, in that sense, kick yourself down in the mud and throw yourself into the gutter. That understand that everything that you're doing is part of an experience, and you're not belittling yourself. You're understanding that you're simply moving into the process of enhancing your filter to discover more of what you want by experiencing firstly what you don't want.
So essentially, we don't actually have to do anything. So
Correct.
Within the matrix of eternity, everything has already been done. And
Absolutely. Simply you existing here on this planet is doing something.
Right.
So again, you're all in that sense here to be. That's the whole idea. When you look at send and you look at receive, you need to look at the nexus point, which is to be. In order for that to send and receive, it needs to exist. Therefore, you exist upon this planet, and therefore you are always sending and receiving based upon the preferences that you want to explore. We have always said from our perspective that you're on a paradise planet. You're on vacation right now. And that many of you in that sense take this vacation so seriously that it needs to be so filled with drama that you don't even realize why you're here on this planet. This is part of the amnesia state. So the whole idea here is that simply by knowing that you're a human being on this planet and that you exist, you've already accomplished everything that you know you can do.
Okay, so that goes a lot, not with a lot of what we hear from other channelers, other aspects, but anyways, that's another question entirely.
It does conflict with some things the Galactic Federation have said.
Yeah, but
Right, would you like to pose an example?
Well, in a second.
All right.
In terms of the procrastination bit, just one last thing that I believe that both of us would like addressed is it's more so that, there's something we feel like we would really like to do. And we felt like we would really like to do it for, a long time. And it's always been there. And yet it seems like, every time we initiate the process, it always somehow kind of self-sabotages itself. We kind of self-sabotage ourselves. And
Simply because you're not in the alignment together for that to propagate. That in that sense may feel that you have somewhat of a similarity, but there's not a consensus to the point to where that can propagate correctly on a co-creational level. You still have differences in regards to how it can be orchestrated in order for that particular form of co-creation to then be propagated, which then causes kinks. It's not to say it won't happen, it's just simply in the point to where it is constantly in processing until you allow yourselves to have a similarity and synchronicity that can allow it to be so. Let's say, for example, going to a trip to Hawaii. Many of you want to go on a trip to Hawaii and you really want to go together, but there are other aspects in regards to the way. I can't get enough time off work. I don't have enough money right now saved up that I can go to Hawaii. But in that sense, as you work together in synchronicity to where you all know the fundamentals that you need to accomplish, that co-creation then becomes propagated because you're all together in consensus to allow this situation to manifest.
Talking about the individual, but that actually was a good question too. So,
well, it goes the same way with the individual because, as we stated, a co-creation is only seen from that in the way of, shall we say, working together with the octaves of reality. Because even though you're functioning in a co-creation, you're really just functioning in a creation itself. Because understand that everybody else just is an aspect of you. But because you all see each other as separate, you feel that the idea that there must be, shall we say, some form of arrangements that can be detrimental or beneficial to allowing a co-creation to manifest. But the whole idea really is that you're all just creating together. And that in synchronicity to the point to where it is feasible, you all come together aligned in synchronicity to allow this to propagate.
Perfect.
On a self level and on a co-creational level.
Okay, so to the other question now, what is the Galactic Federation of Light?
There are, shall we say, two distinct versions in regards to the Galactic Federation of Light. The whole idea is that there is another matrix contained within your fourth density grid that makes it appear in regards of, shall we say, all dimensions combined. The whole idea is that this is holography. The holography in regards to a box within a box within a box within a box. It is through the idea of, shall we say, manipulation and, shall we say, deception in some particular way that represents the idea to where all of these octaves together represent different dimensions when in fact they're not. The whole idea here is that this particular false grid we shall name is something that has been orchestrated by other beings that are much more in the idea of not having your best interest at heart. The original Galactic Federation of Light, or shall we say the Galactic Confederation of Light, simply represents that of an original Lyran consciousness that have now reached their point of non-physicality to where they are much more behind the scenes and they're really not that involved in regards to your own prosperity as a race. They're simply observing you, shall we say, on the back burner, but they're not really committing themselves to form a point of intervention to how many other groups are. The Galactic Federation of Light is in that sense a particular form of holographic deception created through the constellation of Orion. And that many of these particular beings themselves will represent themselves as clones in regards to many other beings. You would refer to them as Archangel Michael. You would refer to them as Sananda. You would refer to them as the Count of Saint Germain.
Yes.
You would refer to them as the idea of Ashtar. In that sense. That's not to say that the beings themselves truly do not exist. But what you are doing is you are experiencing a mirror imitation in front of the being itself. It is what you would consider to be a prism within a prism. That the prism within the prism is redirecting your focus in regards to a particular form of energy that is more coherent to those in the vibration of uncertainty and, shall we say, lack of understanding of what they are capable of deciding through their heart. So therefore, in that sense, this is why many channelers, in that sense, on, shall we say, a scale, we don't often use percentages, but often on a scale between 90 to 95% are receiving distorted information. Simply because they are not allowing themselves to function more into their heart space, they are following more in regards to what is an appeal based upon popularity. That feel that they, in that sense, take no responsibility to how they can correctly, through discernment, attain their understandings of channeling other beings. They, in that sense, do not test their entities. So the whole idea is that as these entities literally project themselves into their consciousness and feel that they are, shall we say, these great beings of light, they are often, in that sense, caught by the limber tail, shall we say, for example, that they are simply blindly receiving everything that these beings are saying because they see them in a higher perspective as a demigod, rather than the idea of understanding the value of their own selves.
Yeah.
So the whole idea is that the Galactic Confederation of Light is very, very similar to our energy, that we do not judge you in regards to the sustainment of how far you wish to bring yourselves into your life. We really don't care in regards to the dramas that are happening in your life because we know that you're always on track. That's the whole idea. Now, you will notice that many of the Galactic Federation of Light can be highly attained in regards to your preferences of drama, and they love to get involved. We don't. So again, the whole idea here is that we see drama as children playing in the ocean. At some point, they're going to come out and dry themselves off. But the whole idea is that many of the beings who see these children playing within the ocean want to dive into the ocean with them, and in that sense create a form of trickery in feeling that they are much more superior and that they should be listening to them. They simply represent the fragments of ego on a different dimensional scope that represents this particular false grid matrix that is holographically and deceptively creating the idea of other particular dimensions that simply represent lower octaves of fourth density to move more into the understanding of everybody else to feel that these are highly angelic beings, when in fact they are simply nothing more than holographic or thought form based individuals, beings in that sense, that are much more acclimated to the idea of superiority and deception in regards to humans continuing to belittle themselves so that they represent a feeding source in regards to the energy themselves, to where these beings are constantly being praised by the humans that they are channeling, therefore they are disempowering themselves and giving these energy to these particular beings. So again, that is, shall we say in a nutshell, based upon the idea of the Galactic Confederation of Light and the Galactic Federation of Light.
I think that explains why there's a mixed message from
and
what you
so
said.
bad, yeah.
I was already...
So we should be able to pose an example.
You said that we were actually here on this planet on vacation.
The party time, basically.
Yes.
This was actually
Just from our perspective.
a garden vacation for us, and
Yes.
they have actually stated the exact opposite, that we needed to be working and that this was not a vacation.
And it's getting very serious, and that we have to quit everything that we consider to be fun. Basically, it just, get very serious about it.
Well, the thing is that we are not judgmental in regards to how other races perceive that. Believe us, there are beings that are very much in the same vibration as us that do see you in regards to the planet being a confinement.
Yeah.
We simply see it in a different light. We simply wish to see it in the way that you are all just allowing yourself to have fun in this vacation planet, but you're allowing yourself through your own beliefs to feel that you are imprisoned. And many beings in that sense will go with that particular alignment simply because that is how they're able to, shall we say, interact with you in the way that is sustainably appropriate on a cohesive level.
Sure.
Reality is by interpretation and always will be.
Okay. And I also think that the channelers you were talking about have problems with our limited language, and they're actually to some extent translating the messages that are coming through. And I'm pretty sure they get the words wrong sometimes.
Well, that can happen. Now, the whole idea is in that sense to where much of the common Galactic Federation of Light of saying that you all have a mission and that you're all here to work very, very hard to achieve that mission. All right, that's a perspective. But here's the idea. You all are at work, but this work is effortlessness, because effortlessness truly is the subtlety in regards to what you see yourselves as. It's what spirit is. Spirit never has to strain and become so tense in allowing a manifestation to come together.
It's kind of
when you manifest something together, you are doing it through effortlessness.
Yeah.
So the whole idea of work itself can be work, but work into the point to where it is effortless. That's the whole idea. You do not need to strain yourselves in feeling that you need to all come together and fix this planet. You're all doing that, but you're doing it into the point to where, again, moving back to the example of these other particular elements that represent fractal patterns, where in the proper alignment you will all allow yourselves to attain the wholeness that represents the symbol of completion. That's what you're all doing. So even those that represent, quote-unquote, the dark ones, the dark forces upon your planet, you should be sending them as much love as you're sending anyone else in the light. Because if it was not for them, you would not understand what the light is not. So in that sense, everything that you're going through in regards to darkness has much as a contribution of you then moving into the light. It is a process. It is a filtration. And here is something that we will share. Every single spiritual teacher that you consider to be highly prized upon your planet, Jesus Christ, Buddha, etc., had to go through the deepest forms of darkness first before they were able to understand their own enlightenment. You need to shatter yourselves to the point to where you have looked at the whole in the deepest way that you can imagine to then realize that you're in a hole. And now it's your intention to climb your way out and then move into that meadow of infinity to allow yourself to expand further. That's all you're doing. For us, this is the great form of how a vacation spot can be done. What better place on planet Earth in regards to this beautiful paradise planet where you can learn all of these dense lessons to moving yourself more into the light. You could not be more in an appropriate, beautiful place to do that. So in that sense, this is why we see it as a vacation world. Your world is beautiful, is it not?
Yes, it is.
Absolutely. Would that not make it a vacation planet?
Does for me.
All right.
Yes, I guess it can be argued when you're like getting like tortured on the rack. I don't think most of us find that appealing, but
the whole idea is that prisons exist within the beauty of the earth, not in totality of the earth.
Takes a balance. We're going to run out of time. I got one more quick question.
Yes.
As part of the what I perceive to be a partial or total collapse of society as we know it, which is potential outcome of what's happening right now. I'm really toying with the idea of urban versus rural positioning or locating. I'm really attracted to both urban settings and establishing myself in an urban situation where I have a lot.
So what is it about the appeal of the urban that in that sense brings you joy?
Right, but there's also the appeal of the rural. Which
what is the appealing factor in regards to the urban that you particularly enjoy?
I'm just going to tell you what you like more. I told you already. So go with what you like more.
That is actually not what we're asking.
We're
just asking in that sense what you prefer in regards to the nature of the urban life.
It's the ability.
What is it that you enjoy?
It's the ability to interact with a lot of different people.
Correct. And what is it about the rural that you enjoy?
And it's the beauty and the natural vacation spot.
Correct. You understand that this is what's going to collectively come together in your life within the years to come. You are going to be rurally urban. That's the point. That's exactly what's happening right now because you're only separated in regards to these divisions. This is why many of you feel that the masculine and the feminine can really only be felt in regards to their corresponding gender. This is incorrect. There are males on this planet that are far more feminine than masculine. There are females on this planet that are far more masculine than feminine.
Yep.
How is that possible? Because gender doesn't matter. Gender is simply the illusion based upon the connotation of themes you're looking to explore in order for you to gain insight of the polarities that you prefer to then become conjunct into a point of androgyny at some point. So the whole idea with urban-rural nature is that you are simply taking the best of both worlds and all the elements that you enjoy and allowing yourself in your own way to collaborate in the form of a conjunction to where the two of these work together in harmony. You cannot have the yin without the yang and the yang without the yin. You are allowing the yin and yang to function together in harmony, the black and the white and the spectrum of everything, of all colors in between.
Neat.
Make sense?
That works. Yes.
All right. We are short on time for now, but we thank you very much, both of you, for the wonderful allowance of this interaction to take place today. I am Adronis from Sirius, sending love, appreciation, and unconditional gratitude to both of you. Thank you so much for this most wonderful interaction, and we now return to the conduit. Goodbye for now.
Adronis.
Thank you, Adronis.